for those of you who haven't met me, I'm Megan Schuitema. I teach choir at Harrison, and I've been messing with creating virtual ensembles since March, basically. I am still very much a novice. I've never been a music tech kind of a person. This unique circumstance has led me to that. So I do have a few disclaimers for you before we get started with this presentation. I will be specifically focusing on creating virtual ensembles within Adobe Premiere Pro. I've gotten a lot of questions on why I chose that program specifically to make my videos. To be completely frank, I opened other programs like Final Cut and iMovie and found them to be less user-friendly for someone with very minimal technology experience. So that's just a personal thing for me. Then once I realized that Adobe products are functional on Windows computers as well, and you're not as pinned down to Mac only, it was just icing on the cake for me. So with the Adobe Premiere Pro program and everything else in the Creative Cloud, once you have an account, you can sign up and download those programs onto any of your computers. I pay for a personal subscription. That's just kind of my choice. I wanted to have it be my own personal subscription, but it is $20 a month to be subscribed to the Adobe Creative Cloud. A workaround for that, for many of you, especially those of you who have yearbooks at your school or yearbook classes at your school, you may be able to get a shared site license with your yearbook teacher or somebody else on campus. I would recommend reaching out to AV Tech and graphic design and see if they have access to those codes for you. But anyway, coming back to it, I really prefer Adobe Premiere Pro. It's a little bit more functional for me personally, and I like how easily it ties in with the rest of the programs in the Creative Cloud suite. So it's a very much personal preference thing. I will be taking you through step by step, all the way through the process of creating a virtual ensemble. I have a couple little tracks that I made of myself singing things to give you a little bit of a walkthrough on it. It's a fairly short little video, but the process is pretty extensive, I won't lie, but it is something that one person with very little technology experience can accomplish. Again, I had no idea how to use these products on March 13th, and I published our first virtual choir video by the end of March, and that was including time for collecting videos from students and all that. One other thing that I want to say that's not specific to Premiere Pro, but is, you know, very important when you're creating a virtual ensemble, it helps so much more for the kids to have something to play along with or to sing along with than having a conducting video or just like an accompaniment track. It lines up so much easier if they can hear their own instrument performing the music as well. So I always went in and made tracks of myself singing our pieces the way that I wanted them to sing them, the same way I would model in class. And I felt like that worked out a lot better. I made the mistake of giving an accompaniment track and just a video of me conducting and mouthing words at them, and it was nearly impossible to line up. So you want to give the students as much of a framework to work with as possible. I found that playing tracks or singing tracks are definitely the way to go with that. And the last thing before I get into the actual nitty-gritty of it all, obviously a virtual ensemble will never and should never replace what we do, but y'all are here, so you know that, I think. Many of our communities are pretty product-based, and that's totally fine. They want to see that concert. They want to get that first place trophy. Totally understand it. And I feel like this is a relatively easy way for us to give them that in these weird circumstances. You know how it is. Okay. So the other two prerequisites that are specific to Adobe Premiere Pro are you need a moderately powerful computer to do all of this video editing and audio editing in one take. It is a high-powered program, but it will slow your computer down pretty quickly. So I am working from home right now on a solid-state drive iMac with a lot of storage, and I can give you all the specs and all that business if you need. Especially if you want to reach out and ask about like specifically what type of computer to use this on or to use with this, I'm more than happy to explain it to you. I don't know what a lot of it means, RAM and storage and blah, 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 but you know, but there are some specific recommendations that I do have based on my research. The other thing is, if you don't have a very powerful computer, you can split this up into multiple small chunks. Say you have 60 performers performing a piece together, you can make little mini grids with just 6 of your singers or players or whoever, and kind of compile them all together into one big block. So it makes it a lot easier for your computer to handle if you're doing it in small chunks. Your back will also thank you. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get into the screen share process of this. Not those. Here we go. All right. Let me close all these things. Okay, so welcome to my desktop, and here is the first opening screen for Adobe Premiere Pro. By the way, due to the size of this program, I will not be able to see the chat during this meeting, so if you have a question, please feel free to unmute yourself and speak up. Otherwise, I will check the chat periodically. Anywho's, so if we are going to start from the very, very beginning, you click New Project and title it however you would like to title it, obviously. But there's a lot of other settings on this first page that are a little bit weird looking. So the first thing that I'm going to ask you to do is here under Video Rendering and Playback, choose the renderer software only. That will prevent a lot of slowdown and a lot of weird glitches that I'll talk more about later on. But if you just make that very quick change here in the dropdown, you'll have a much smoother transition into using this software. So it's going to take a second to open, and here we go. When you first look at the screen for Adobe Premiere Pro, it's kind of unfriendly. It is just a big, large gray block with a bunch of buttons that look very confusing, but I promise this one's actually it's pretty easy to deal with. So there are some basic setup things that you can start with. First of all, there's none of your files are here. So the very first thing that we're going to do is go up to File, Import, and search for the files that you would like to include in your project. So now I have to hunt down, here it is. So I saved my videos into one folder on my desktop to make it a little bit easier. If you try to move files around on your computer after you've imported them into Adobe Premiere Pro, you will get an error message when you go back in to try to work on the project again. You'll have to have the program hunt down the files you were using originally. So make sure that you have everything kind of saved where you want it and start from there with a clean slate. So I'm going to import these 2 videos of me singing and this little grid pattern that I created. So the very first thing you're going to do is import those files. And one other thing that you can do, you can either obviously rename the files with like your student's name and their voice part or instrument prior to starting this whole process. I also will occasionally rename them in the project. Sometimes I don't even use names. I just order them 1 to however many singers I have, so it's a little bit faster. So first you're importing, and then we get a whole look at everything that's going on the screen. So a couple things that I want to point out. This here, where your files got imported to, is the project panel. You can do a few things from here, but the vast majority of the work that you're going to be doing are going to happen in the timeline down here on the bottom and the program panel up here at the top. So starting with the timeline, this is where you can see the linear and chronological layout of your video, as well as the order of like layered videos and graphics. So I'll explain that a little bit better with this. So once you have a video imported, you can just click it, drag it to your timeline, and it pops up right there. So when you first start off, you will only have room for 3 or 4 audio and video tracks. It's very easy to add more. This black space right here, if you right click, you'll get the add tracks option, and you can add as many video tracks wherever you would like. Same with audio tracks. So I've just added an extra one there for fun. So now with this timeline, you can add video with audio like this. You can add audio without video if you have just an audio file that you would like to use, like an accompaniment track or something. And you can add photos to the timeline. So in my case, I made this little grid to kind of make the lining up of the videos easier later on. But yeah, you can just add photos to the video side, and you can add accompaniment files and other audio tracks to the audio side. Okay, so as you can see right here, this is a really short little audio track. It's only, what, 18 seconds or so long. But if you have a longer track, when you first import things into the timeline, you will get the whole video crushed into this very short space here. If you have like a 4 or 5 minute long piece or something like that, the sound waves here in the audio side of the panel get very, very crushed together and hard to see. So you have these two scrolly bars here and here. If you would like to be able to see the sound waves a little bit clearer, you just take the dot here, the circle at the end of the scroll bar, and you can stretch out your tracks so that it's a lot clearer to look at. You can get a much better view of any like audio peaks, or if you see like a giant peak somewhere, you can check for like a cough or an awkward page turn or something like that. So that's how you zoom in on the files. I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to remove this grid for a second just so I can get it out of my way. All I did was delete it. So I put my little alto track into the timeline here. I'll actually just play a second of it. And so I go on, so yeah, so you get the timeline down here, and up here in the top in the program panel, you will see what's going on with your video. I'm going to also drag in my soprano track there. And you can immediately see with the audio files that these tracks do not line up. The soprano track starts way, way later than the alto track, so that's obviously not going to work out. So in order to fix that, what you can do is, if you look closely here, when I bring my mouse over the edge of the track, you get this little red bracket that pops up with an arrow. That's the crop button. So I'm going to crop my soprano track, make it a little bit shorter, and then I can just drag this over to get it a little bit closer to lining up. It's still not perfect, but there are two ways that we can line up that video very quickly. If you have something that's very homorythmic, or if you have like two kids singing or playing the same part and they're pretty well lined up already, the easy mode version of lining up these videos is to select both of the tracks. So I'm just clicking and dragging so both of them are selected. I'm going to hit the right click button, and I'm going to click the synchronize button. Now, I like to do, I synchronize it to audio here, so that's why this button is selected. So I'm going to hit OK. And oh darn, it didn't work. I'm not lined up perfectly with myself because I'm a human. So sometimes this will work, and more often than not, it won't. But there's a very easy way to fix that as well. So here's what you're going to do. The hard mode version is to zoom in on the sound waves in the track like we've already done. And you can select a single track and use the nudge function to scoot it down so that the two tracks line up. So on a Mac, I'm going to use the command button and the arrow keys to scoot the track back and forth. If you look closely, you can see it kind of, yeah, you're doing a little dance up there. On PC, that's going to be your Alt button and your left or right arrow. So I'm holding the command key, and then I'm going to scoot it over, just hitting the arrow key until things look like they line up. That looks pretty close. So let's see if that worked. And so I go, so that's much closer. It's still not totally perfect, and I don't think it ever will be completely perfect because, you know, we're humans. But the closer you can get, the better. So I'm gonna nudge it just a couple clicks to the left and see if that made it any better. And so I go. That's way, way better. Yeah, so I'm going to leave it like that, and that's how you line up your videos. Now, if you, I already kind of explained how to crop the video, but again, I have all this extra space here, and the alto track, I don't know why, but I have like the whole ton, 10 extra seconds of video here. Why? So I'm going to bring my cursor over to the end of that file. The little red bracket comes up with the arrow, and you just drag and crop. Click and drag. There it is. And I can do that the same here at the beginning. Now, something that's a really useful feature when you're cropping next to another file, this will automatically show you if your files are cropped to the same length. So it makes it a lot cleaner to deal with. Yeah. So, and if you want to get an even more specific crop, you can again zoom in further and further and further and further, and it will let you even just like little tiny milliseconds crop it. So that's how that all works. You can also unlink a video from your audio. So let's say, for example, here that maybe I coughed somewhere in this track, who knows? So if I want to, I can literally just chop that little cough or page turn or whatever weird sound that happened in the background. I can chop that directly out. So what I'm going to do is I right clicked the track that I want to deal with and I unlink it. So I've unlinked the video from the audio, which means I can edit this audio separately from the video. If you saw before when I was cropping, the cropping happens like together, like the video track and the audio track, because they are linked. When you crop them, you'll end up cropping both at the same time. If you don't want to affect your video, but you do want to crop your audio, that's why you'd use the unlink function. So let's say here, I held on a little bit too long. I'm going to crop that cutoff out. Up here in the top left area to the left of the program panel, you have this little razor tool. If you click that and bring it down to the timeline and click right before the thing that you would like to remove, and after, you now have a separate little segment here that you can remove by itself. So I went back up, got my cursor tool back, click and delete. So now that extraneous cutoff is gone. It's very obvious that it's gone. It like kind of pops out for a second, but there's a way to fix that and make it a little bit more subtle, which I will get to later. Now, right now you can see that you can only see one of my videos. You can't see both. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to select one of the videos to resize it to make it so that I can actually see both. So I'm going to bring my video down to, oh, let's actually explain how that works. So if you click the video track you would like to edit, you're going to get this stuff popping up in the top left panel. This is the effect controls panel. You can change the position of the video. You can change the scale, the size. You can rotate the video if you want it to be at a crooked angle or something. There's a lot of features you can use up in this panel. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to resize it. So top left panel, effect controls, and you change the scale until it's roughly as small or as big as you like. I'm just going to guess. Let's make it half the size. Okay, cool. Now that I took it down from 100 scale to 50. You also can move horizontally or vertically in this panel up here. So this first number, the 640 number, is the horizontal number, and then the second is your vertical number. So you can either click in different values and kind of guess and check your way through, or you can just, when you see these two little arrows pop up over this number, you can just drag it. So I've just dragged myself over the screen there. And now, I don't know, I like that vertical position. Maybe I'll just scoot it up and down for fun. There you go. You can do the same thing with the vertical option. And I'm going to also resize the alto track now. So I clicked on the alto video track. You'll see that the audio is unaffected. And I'm going to change the scale to 50, and then I'll drag it over here and kind of position it where I would like it to be in frame. So I've dragged it to kind of get it to line up well with the soprano track. So there I am. You can see two of my videos. Now, the other thing that you can consider, I was obviously recording this in my office, so there's a ton of extra space. There's this big bookshelf back here with a bunch of stuff on it. I don't want to see that. So what I'm going to do is click Effects up here on the top bar. This panel here to the right will change. These options are so extensive, I haven't even begun to start messing with these yet. Maybe like a quarter of what is in here I have messed with. So you're in the effects panel over here. We're going to click video effects. We're going to click transform. Under transform, you have all these little options. You can feather the edges. You can flip it. I'm actually going to use the crop feature. So here you click the crop button and you drag it down onto the timeline, onto the video that you would like to crop. So I have the crop feature on the alto track, and you'll notice over here in the effect controls panel, these crop percentages have popped up, so you can kind of mess with that as much as you want. So I'm just going to take 15% off the right and left, and it's a little bit more of a box. There's still stuff in the background, but I'll give it a little bit more. Cool. So now that's cropped to a way that's a little bit more aesthetically pleasing for me. Same thing with the soprano, crop it, drag the crop feature over. I'm going to take 20% off the left and 20% off the right, and there you go. You can drag these numbers just the same way you could the position numbers as well to make your life a little bit easier. So that's how that works. Okay, so the last thing that I will say about moving your videos around and repositioning them and cropping them, once you have them how you like them, please, 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 please do yourself a favor and do the following two things. Hit Command S to save. The program will occasionally save automatically for you, which is really helpful, but especially when you're working with a ton of singers or players at a time, it has crashed on me before. It has only crashed on me when I've had upwards of 60 to 70 singers in. But I would just keep hitting that save button no matter what. Now, the other thing to do to prevent you from accidentally deleting something that you don't want to delete is down here in the timeline panel on each of these video and audio tracks, you'll see this little lock button. If you hit that lock button, then you can't move those tracks around anymore. You can unlock it whenever you want, but let's say, for example, you were moving the soprano track around, like you wanted to scoot it to the left or earlier in the video or something, and then you accidentally dragged it over top of the alto video. Now the alto video track is gone. I have done that to myself so very many times, and I could not figure out what mistake I made and why that video disappeared. So just save yourself the trouble. When the video is where you would like it to be, lock it. Same with the audio tracks as well. So I'm going to unlock these because we're about to get into audio editing. Let me make sure we're good in the chat. Cool. And I know this is a lot of information, so I'm sure it's a little bit overwhelming at first. So we'll get directly into audio editing. So there is some audio stuff that you can do within the confines of Premiere Pro, but there are some other things that I'll show you, very, very quick and easy things that we can do in Adobe Audition, another product within the Premiere Pro or Creative Cloud family. So here's what I'm going to start with. These audio tracks. You can edit things like volume and balance stuff in here within Premiere Pro. So if I click one of these audio tracks, up here in the effect controls panel, I get the audio clip mixer button. And when I'm playing these tracks, you'll see their levels kind of begin to spike and whatnot. And so I go, okay, so I'm pretty balanced because I'm singing against myself, so I don't really have to do a ton of editing on that. But say, for example, I did not love how loud my soprano was. You know, you just drag the volume down as low as you would like. So for those kids that recorded too close to their phone or too far away from their phone, you do have a little bit of autonomy over fixing that problem. Another thing to mess with within Premiere Pro, you can fade the beginning or ending of a clip. So let's say here where I cropped off that little cutoff, if it's a little bit too harsh of a transition between this audio track and this dead space here, you can use an audio effect. So I'm going to go to the effects panel here where it was before. And instead of going to video effects and transitions, I'm going to go to audio transitions, I believe. Yes. The only thing that pops up is crossfade, and you have 3 different options for fading audio. You can also use this to fade directly from one track to another, like without a gap in between, but I mostly just use this to make the edges a little bit softer. I typically use the exponential fade option, but I truly could not tell you the difference between the 3 of them for the scope of the projects that I'm working on. So I'm going to drag that exponential fade all the way down here, and then we get this long fade here. I'll play it for you because it's a little bit aggressive sounding at first. Yeah, my alto track just got faded out far too quickly. I don't want that. If you hover over the edge of your little exponential fade bar here, you'll get a very similar button to the crop button when you're working with a whole track. So you can just make that exponential fade much shorter. So it makes it a little bit more subtle rather than like a hard cutoff in the middle of a track. So those are the easy things that you can do within Premiere Pro. The first time that I made a virtual ensemble video, I only used Premiere Pro audio editing. I don't think I did anything else outside of Premiere Pro. However, there are some really easy effects that you can mess with in Audition, and I'll tell you my favorite ones so you have somewhere to start with. So Audition, let me go ahead and get us into that. So if you have Adobe Audition downloaded already from the Creative Cloud, it will sync immediately up with your Premiere Pro. So if you find that you have a track that you don't like how it sounds, or there's something weird going on with it, there might be a little bit of grainy audio, or you want to add some reverb or something, if you right-click the audio track, you get all these options. You get an option to edit clip in Audition, and if you click on that, it will take the audio directly over into Adobe Audition, which I already had open, but there you go. So that's just the audio track from my soprano track from Premiere Pro. There are a couple effects that I really like to use. So here's how you get to them, first of all. In the top left panel, this is the effects rack. What you're going to do to add effects to the effect rack is click on one of the little numbered track files there, and this little arrow, if you click it and open it, you have all of these options. A lot of these are significantly more technical than I am willing to delve into. I don't know how a lot of these works, to be completely honest, but some useful effects that I like to typically use are reverb. Now, here's the thing. If you choose whichever reverb you want, you might run into something like this. So I'm going to just click regular reverb here for a second. And I immediately got a warning saying the selected effect may not be suitable for real-time playback because it is either CPU intensive or high latency. If you use effects like this, it can significantly slow down your project. So I would highly recommend, rather than using the traditional reverb option, okay. I'm going to delete that reverb. And instead, I'm going to use either convolution reverb, studio, or surround. So those are 3 options that you can use. I'm not going to use any of them for this particular project yet, but they all, yeah, I'll show you real quick. For example, here, there's some presets that you can mess with, but you can use these bars to edit the room size, add a delay, add gain, all this business. You can mess with as much of this as you would like to. I like to use, rather than using just the standard reverb tool, if you go to special and then go to mastering, there is an effect that I like to use called warm concert hall. So I'm going to play, actually really quick, I'll play this audio one more time for you without the effect. And so I go. Okay, fine. Yeah, cool. Now I'm going to go in and add that special, not the loudness one. I'm going to add special and then mastering and then warm concert hall. So here's what that sounds like with the warm concert hall effect. It's a little aggressive on the reverb. But yes, so you can, the warm concert hall is my favorite effect to use because you can kind of click and drag on that panel and see what sounds the best to you. It's just a good standard setting, to be honest, and you can manually affect the reverb from there. And honestly, just fiddle with the effects and see what you like. We have a lot of different options. If you want to add some pitch correction, you feel free. You'll get a very Daft Punk effect very quickly. So once you're done adding all of these effects, you click the apply button and it's applied. And now once you save it, hit Command S or file save, either way, it will automatically change that file in Premiere Pro, and we can switch back and forth between these as much as you'd like. The other thing that I would like to point out, you can hear me breathing in this track right there. So a lot of these little small blips are my, like, every time I breathe. So if you want to get rid of a breath, if a kid is like gasping into the video, what you're going to do is you have this little cursor here, and you can select the portion of the video that you would like to heal. So if you right click that selection, you have the option to either just fully make it a silence, or you can auto heal the selection. I like to use the auto heal selection option because it doesn't make it sound so obvious, but it will fix your problem. So yeah, it didn't fully get rid of any sound in that moment, which I'll show you what silencing it feels like. It's a little bit, it's just a touch more obvious. I like to use the auto heal selection, but either one really works. It also, be careful though, if you're working with singers, the auto heal selection does not just minimize breaths, it'll minimize fricative consonants. So I have made the mistake of accidentally like healing out an S in a word on some of my virtual choirs that I've worked on. So just be careful that you just select the breath, not any consonants that you actually might need. So there is that. Once you've added all the effects, you hit that apply button, you're all good to go. Here is a new thing that I actually learned this week. There is an effect in here called Diagnostics. Again, actually show you that. So if you go up to the help bar, you can search for it, but it's under the effects rack as well up here in the top bar. If you click that Diagnostics button, you'll get this panel that shows up. You can use a declipper. So if you have a file basically that somebody sang too close or played too close, you can auto heal any of the clipped audio, which is the highly distorted stuff for when the volume is way, way, way too loud. So when you get declipper here, you can click restore heavily clipped or restore lightly clipped. I'm going to choose heavily clipped and see, and press the scan button. Mine doesn't have any severely clipped audio. Let's try lightly clipped. Nothing either, but if you have, especially with instrumental stuff, because I had to deal with restoring some organ tracks the other day, this is a very helpful tool if they're singing or playing too close to the video. So yeah, once you've added everything that you want, you've healed everything you need to do, I would hit that save button one more time, file, save it when that's actually available. And then when you flip back over into Premiere Pro, I don't know if you saw that, but this track, the sound waves changed just a little bit because it automatically applied the settings that you chose. So now, let me real quick just check that chat. We good? Great. Okay, cool. Here we go again. Yes, this one. Sure. Okay, so now the last little section that I want to go over is adding graphics. So if you want to, for example, change the background color because the default they're going to give you is black, I would do it. You can do it in multiple ways, but I like to do it this way. So down here in the bottom left, you get the project panel. If you right click somewhere in the empty space in this box, you'll get a menu that pops up. Choose new item, color matte, and okay. So I'm just going to leave all these settings the same. All right, so now you can just pick a color. I'm going to pick bright red. And you can name it whatever you want, background color. So there you go. Now you have this over here in the project panel that's just a wash of color. So what I'm going to do is from there, drag this onto the project panel. So if you notice, now that section of the timeline is just red. You can't see my videos at all. The way to work around that is you want these videos actually to be on a higher video track than the background color is. So you can do that one of two ways. You can just drag everything around, or if you had gone in and added a blank track beforehand, then you could put the background color on the bottom from the get-go. Yeah, so the higher the number, the more forward in the frame the graphic will be, or video. So just keep that in mind. If I had edited either of these videos or graphics to be on top of each other, the higher number video is going to be the one in front. So now this background color graphic does not extend for the full length of the video. So the second I get to here, it goes away. You can expand this the same way that you could crop the other video and audio tracks. So right here, you get that little red bar with the arrow, click it, drag it to fill up the whole video. So now it's the full length of your video and you don't have to do anything else with it. So that's how that works. Now, if you want to add a title card, you kind of do it the same way as you dealt with this graphic. So I'm going to leave a little bit of extra space at the beginning of the timeline for me to put like a second or two worth of title card in. I usually put in a title card for about 10 seconds just to give people time to read it all. So I'm going to select all the videos and audio tracks and all that business and drag it over so that I have plenty of space at the beginning of timeline, drag to the beginning of my, the whole timeline here, even way before the videos. And you can add text and also any other images that you want. If you have a pre-made title card, if you have an image somewhere or a logo that you'd like to use, you can import that into the project panel the same way that you imported everything else, or you can manually create a text graphic here. So on the top bar, you have graphics. We're going to click that. And then in the top right panel now, we have this essential graphics panel. I'm going to go to edit. And then right here, you have this little tiny folded post-it button that says new layer. We're going to create a new layer of text. So automatically we get a new text layer right there. Very easy. And now you can change that however you would like it to be. You can change the font if everything is selected. And there's a ton of fonts available in the Creative Cloud as well. Bold, underline, you can edit that the same way you would in any other program that uses text. And once again, the graphic here is only 4 seconds long. That's not really long enough for me for this title graphic thing, so I'm going to drag it to fill up more of the space. You can also add captions this way. So if you wanted to add text at the bottom for like closed captioning kind of a thing, you can do this as well. You would just put it under your videos and then over here, I just move it around so that at the bottom of your video, you have captions, like just repeating the text that's going on. So that's how that one works. Now, if you want to clean up the edges of your video, like say, for example, I didn't have my alto and soprano like quite lined up. They're like right next to each other, or I have two singers that are right next to each other and their frame size is slightly different. And I wanted to very quickly clean this up and make it look a little bit more refined. You can also do that with the graphics panel. Go up here to the new layer button in the essential graphics. Oh, did not mean to add text. Get rid of that real quick. New layer. And I'm going to do this with a rectangle. So it's automatically going to give you this filled in box, which is not helpful. But over here, you can deselect fill and select stroke. So the stroke is going to be the border around your rectangle. The border right now is really, really thin and it is white. So I'm going to make the border bigger, like somewhere around 10 usually works well for me. If you would like thicker borders, you can do that as well. And for this project, I think I'll need it. So I've made the border up to a 20-point stroke. So now you can just stick that around your frame so that it looks a little bit smoother. You can also just layer rectangles on top of each other so that every single kit has a rectangle over there, a border over their video. It definitely, especially when everything is all black, it makes it look a lot more professional very quickly. And again, make sure that that rectangle graphic is actually the full length of your project so that it doesn't just disappear halfway through. There. Now, another thing to consider is right now the graphic kind of just pops up really harshly. Let me show you with the title track. It's just bam, and it's there. There is no like fade in or transition. There's a really easy way to add that though. So you're going to go to your effects panel at the top. And we're going to go to video transitions, and you'll see the folder here that says dissolve. I use the cross dissolve option. I'm going to click and drag it the same way I have with everything else, drop it at the beginning of the graphic tile. And now, rather than it harshly just popping up on screen really fast, we get a nice little fade in, so it's a little bit more subtle. There are tons more options for transitions, like so many options, but many of them do look like PowerPoint slide transitions. So if you want to stick with something that's very subtle and classy, that cross dissolve option is for you. These page peel ones are very funny. Like I'll just give you a real quick. That one's not as great. But if you have a background going on, it like does the page turn thing the way that it does in PowerPoint. So that's how you add all of the effects and all the graphics and all the video stuff, basically. So there are occasionally glitches with this program, but they're not glitches from within the program. They are glitches from the like file types more often than not. So here are a few things that you might run into. Occasionally, I've had a file from a student that was flickering black and white, or for example, I had one singer whose video was working fine for most of the track, and then all of a sudden it did this weird pixelated thing and turned neon green for like a frame, and then it went away. But when you save that video and export it, it still was super glitchy and grainy and weird looking. So to avoid that, you're going to go to File, Project Settings, down here at the bottom, Ingest Settings, and then you're going to tick the box that says like to ingest, to activate ingest. There's a drop down menu here. We're going to click transcode. We're going to use the preset match source H.264 high bitrate. Okay, and then you click OK. Do I know what any of that actually means? No. But did it solve all of my problems that I was having? Yes. So I'm not going to ask too many questions. Okay, occasionally too, I've had footage just black out entirely. When I played a kid's video in QuickTime or on my phone or from Google Drive, it worked just fine. And then when I put it into the Premiere Pro project, the image would just black out. The file would still be here in the timeline, and the audio would still be here in the timeline, but the video would just be a black square instead of anything else. So to avoid that, we're going to actually, we already did that right at the beginning. That was the first thing that I showed y'all how to do. But go to Project Settings, General, and then change the renderer to software only. So that's a really easy fix as well. If you have an issue where a single file seems to be like really slowed down, like for some unknown reason, maybe a kid uploaded it to Google Drive or SharePoint or whatever, and then when you downloaded it, it is like oddly compressed and playing at like half speed. That has only happened to me once or twice, and typically when a kid was working with an older Android phone. So just keep that in mind. You can download the program Handbrake to fix that, but that's a different program outside of the Adobe products, so I won't really get into that now. I do have step-by-step instructions in that outline on how to fix that problem. So if you do run into that, just use Handbrake to change the frame rate and fix that problem. And then if the whole program is noticeably running slower and like the video is freezing up and it's getting very glitchy looking, you can choose a lower playback resolution in this program panel here. So where you do that is you have this little drop down box here in the top, in the bottom right, and I will like genuinely drop my playback resolution down to 1/4. It's not as pretty looking. It's very grainy, but it will move much smoother when you're actually doing the video playback. So it makes it a lot easier to see what's actually going on. So now let's say I'm done with this video. It's clearly weird looking, but if you're finalizing your video, you click on the timeline. So you make sure this timeline box is highlighted with the thin blue line. We're going to go to File, Export, Media, and then we should get a box popping up. Yep, here we go. So this output name is going to be the final name of the file once you save everything. So, sure. So, and you can obviously change where you would like your file to save, and the file format is always going to be MP4 unless you change some stuff in here, which we're not going to get into because you don't need to do it. So I have that title. Make sure that export video and export audio is checked, because otherwise you're going to get an empty audio file or an empty video file. And I always select use maximum render quality. Okay. So finally, we're going to hit the export button. This is a very, very small file, so it's only taking like 15, 20 seconds at most, probably. If you are dealing with a file that has 60, 70 kids in it, it's going to take hours to export. I mean hours. I have had a video that took about 5 hours to export. Is it a lot? Yes. But you can do other things on your computer typically while that's happening. You just can't work with Premiere Pro while that's exporting. So I like to finish my virtual choirs at night right before I go to bed. And then I hit that export button, and by the morning, it is ready to roll. So now that file has saved to my desktop. So I have a couple final notes. Oh, by the way, when you're actually doing the export process, you can scroll through this whole thing so you can look at every second of the video to make sure there's no effects or mess ups or whatever mistakes. And I would highly recommend actually making sure that you watch your project all the way through. I know that seems very self-explanatory, but I have on more than one occasion exported a video that had an error in it, and then I had to go back in and re-edit. So just keep that in mind. My final tidbits for y'all are just, there is so much more to this in Adobe, in the Adobe products. There are ways to make your videos move across the screen and gradually go from black and white to full color. You can zoom in and out. You can highlight a couple singers or players at a given time. You can have the videos become more and less opaque, so they're fading in and out on top of each other. There's so many options, and the best advice I have is to play with the program on your own. There are very, very many YouTube tutorials, and if you start running into any issues, feel free to reach out. Obviously, the steps I've given you will get you to a nice, polished, basic product. I can't get you to Whitaker virtual choir level, but you can show your kids a really nice product of all of their and your hard work.